Welcome to Superintendent's Roundtable. I'm Deborah Vinsel. Before we start the program, we'd like to send out our sincerest condolences to Raj Manhas, the superintendent of the North Thurston schools. He's not with us today because he's in India attending the funeral of his brother. We have our sympathies and our wishes for peace for your family, Raj. But joining us here today at the Roundtable, we do have the superintendents and the deputy superintendent from the North Thurston School joining us. I'll introduce our gentleman. To my right, or to my left here is Mike Kirby from the Tumwater schools. Deputy Superintendent from North Thurston Schools, John Bash. Superintendent from the Olympia School District, Cick Cvitanich, and Andy Wolf from the Yelm Public Schools, or Yelm City Schools. I always do that. So thank you all for joining us. I appreciate that you've taken time out of your busy schedules to be with us. And I know your schedules are busy because the last time we got together was before Christmas. But when we did get together before Christmas, we said we'll set the next meeting for sometime after the legislative session. And late in the school year seemed like a good idea, but as we know, the legislature is still meeting. Today is June 6th for our viewers, and they have not yet finished their work. We'll have a little discussion about what's in store for schools relative to state funding a little bit later. But let's start with some good news. What's been going on that's really great in your district? Some highlights from the year since we last met. We'll start with you, Mike.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the teachers and the principals for their tremendous effort this year. Principals in particular with the new TPEP evaluation, tremendous amount of time to do that job well. And our pilot teachers, we had about 80 in the district that have done that. And those folks that have been providing the training, really a great job and kind of setting the tone for us as we move ahead. So I want to make sure I recognize that.
And TPEP stands for?
TPEP is Teacher Principal Evaluation Process. It's the new system that we're in that has to be, all the teachers have to be involved by 15-16 in the process. But we've been doing very well academically, and I need to recognize the fact that in the last 2 years we've actually had 17 different student achievement, state-level student achievement awards, and 8 of our 11 buildings have been recognized at least once in that process. So we're really proud of the academic work that we're doing in the district.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How about you, John? This is your first time at the table with us, so thank you for sitting in for Raj today. So tell us some highlights of what's been going on in North Thurston in the last 6 months or so.
And thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
We like telling our story, and I'd also like to share that in addition to our staff doing a tremendous job to serve our kids this year, the partnerships that we've continued to grow with our parents and our community are one of the things we look at as a critical piece of what we do. It truly does take a village, and Courtney Shreve, who's with me here today, does a tremendous job in our community relations work with over 2,000 volunteers again this year working in our schools every day. Most recently, we've received some preliminary high school proficiency exams, state level scores for this school year, and we're really excited in reading and writing, which was the most recent release, to see that we've had gains in both subject areas with our high school students. Reaching into the 90% range of students meeting standard in writing, and growth at each of our high schools in that regard. So we're constantly focusing on what we can do to help those students who are not yet at standard. And so one of the highlights this year has been the continued system-wide implementation of a program to identify students who need extra help and then serve them from where they're at and accelerate those students who are behind, called Response to Intervention, or you'll hear it called RTI in our systems. And Raj may have mentioned that when he was here. And then I would just mention that we've had pockets of wonderful success across our system. Our Timberline High School newspaper program, again, was ranked first in the state, 4th in the nation, our Blazer newspaper, and we're proud of them. We had 2 National Merit finalists this year. Extremely proud of those students. And as we honor our graduates at school board meetings this season, we're finding a wide range of future pathways for our kids that include everything from technical programs to scholarly work, as far away as Florida and some going abroad. So we're really proud of our graduates, and it's bittersweet as well because it's kind of hard to say goodbye to kids that you've developed relationships with over 13 years. So.
And it is that season.
Yeah.
We're into that. Dick, give us some highlights and some, you know, proud moments you've seen in the district. You're completing your first year with the district.
Yes, that's a proud moment. Do I get to count that? Like Mike and John, I think in the Olympia School District, we're just tremendously proud of the achievements of our students and our staff. And I think the recognition that comes outside of the school district, for me, is a highlight. We think we're working really hard and we think we're working very smart. But when you're recognized from outside of your own district, and like Tumwater, many of our schools have earned recognition from the State Board of Education. Most recently, U.S. News and World Report magazine highlighted Olympia High School and Avanti High School as top high schools in the state of Washington. And we're really proud of that because that recognition comes from outside of our own school district. A few other areas in which I would say that we're learning and we're growing. Our students individually have done some pretty remarkable things in academic competitions. I think our school district has been a leader in the robotics work in the schools, and our students, one of our teams ended up going to St. Louis to compete in the World Championships, which was really exciting. Our economics team went back east to compete, and our debate team qualified for nationals as well. And our board has really stressed supporting academic competitions, and it's nice to see the students be successful. Less glamorous, but something that I think is worth noting. We've worked hard this year to complete a strategic planning process, and it's work that goes on behind the scenes. But we've worked hard all year, and we'll have a new strategic plan to present to the board this summer, and it's had a good deal of community input and staff and student input, and we're proud of that. Last thing I would say is that in the first year, you get the chance to meet a lot of teachers, students, principals, and families, and for me, as a personal highlight, that's I'm really feel like I've landed in a great spot.
Great. Congratulations. So Andy, some of the wonderful things happening at Yelm.
Yeah, well, every day in Yelm's utopia. I'll just tell you that right now. So, but no, honestly, very proud of what's happened out in the Yelm School District this year. We too have an RTI program that is flourishing, it's taking off. One of the things we did this year is we piloted a program with our LAP, Learning, going to help me with the acronym, Assistance Program, excuse me, jumped right out of my head. And so we brought that down into our 6th grade level, did an after-school program, and we piloted that at 3 of our districts, our schools, and had huge gains for kids in our assessments through the MAP program and things like that. So we really feel positive about that. Along with that, our tradition of having strong vocational programs, our FFA program, those things ranked in the top 5 in the nation. Our FBLA is competed at nationals down in California. We had a group of 8 kids go down there, and so we continue to see those things and just grow and flourish out there. But I want to go to what Mike started this conversation out with, and I think the proudest moment for me this year has been our employees, our teachers. Mike alluded to some of the implementation of the new initiatives that have happened, and they've come out, and I think our teachers agree they are all great initiatives. However, the timelines have been very tight and for teachers. And so we're educating students on one hand and then trying to retrain ourselves on the other. And our teachers have taken that in just great stride, and the resolve that they've shown and the power that they've shown in the classroom to continue to get the results and actually improve the educational processes in our district. And then the work that they've done in themselves is, I don't know, I couldn't be prouder. I think that we're asking more of teachers and administrators than have ever been asked before, and the resolve they've shown has just been tremendous. So very proud.
Congratulations. Since we last met, there have been some incidents around, well, incident is not a strong enough word. There have been tragedies around the United States at schools. Obviously, the shooting at Sandy Hook is still a very raw wound in our national conscience. And so I know that school safety, you know, I know safety is always paramount, but when things like that happen, it really pops it to the surface as, you know, the AAA priority. So In light of those, the events that we've seen around the country, what kinds of things have changed in your schools? How are you addressing ongoing changes in the need for additional security? Are there things that have been suggested that you are implementing, you know, those type of things? We'll just start with you, Andy, and we'll work our way back around. And please feel free to jump in on the conversation, because this is something I think our viewers have, you know, probably wondered about what's going on in our schools relative to this.
I think one of the immediate responses after Sandy Hook was the coalition of schools and law enforcement to come together and work and just kind of look at our own practices within each district, and then how we actually work together as districts too, to make sure that we're kind of providing the same similar, you know, services to our students. I think each of us has you know, a different view. You know, Yelm's a little more rural. So for us, some of our schools are 10 miles out of town, so the response is going to be a little bit different on how we get law enforcement and people there. So I think the one thing it did is just a heightened awareness of all employees. I think that we tend to think it's going to happen in somebody else's backyard, or, you know, and not here.
Well, in a different kind of environment, an urban environment or a more populated environment, yeah.
I think this just brought it home for all folks. Things that we've done, you know, we've increased our SRO, our school resource officer, so we'll have more time there. So we have an officer that is placed within our schools. Not all our schools, mostly at our secondary or elementaries will do that. Thurston County has been very good about sharing resources out and coming out, so as has Pierce County, because we do have one school that's across the county line for us, which makes another unique piece for us. Things that we've done currently right now, we will probably install front door locking systems with panic buzzer and those types of things. Some of those issues we were waiting to see, because the legislature immediately got very much involved, and it seems as they've gone further into their, you know, their session, some of that funding is coming off the table, or that discussion is not. I think so. We're waiting to see what some of the resources might be that would come that way. But again, we continue to work on our drills. All our schools are mapped. The response, how you would exit, leave, all that has done. Emergency, law enforcement, ambulance, everybody who comes. We do 3 drills a year where we do mass kind of type situations like that, at picking different schools, and then a district thing across the thing. So I think that we're in good stead, but I think a lot of work done. We've increased fencing, you know, all those types of things that you have to do, and just
well, I think forward. Too, and not just I think we should also include in this discussion about safety, not just the possibility of something being human perpetrated, but also natural disasters. We've seen the tornadoes in Oklahoma recently and how they devastated 2 schools, and obviously we're an earthquake country, so you know, feel free to pull that into part of this discussion. So
and that's part of those are the drills that I was responding to. So we do those drills monthly at each building, and and they're documented, and we put them on a chart, and parents are well aware of that. So we continue to go down that path.
Right. Dick, how did it affect the Olympia schools?
Well, we looked at it from the perspective because in Sandy Hook there were many precautions, and so we took the perspective of let's control what we can control, and we recognize that we're educators first, and so we've asked for help from community experts. We formulated a group with members of the police department, emergency teams, and staff, and they just completed their work this spring, and will present to the board at an upcoming meeting this summer about things that we can do differently. And we looked at our current procedures, similar to the way Andy described, what we're doing in our buildings, how we're approaching the safety issue. And some things are very simple types of things. We have many outside doors that lead to outside the building, and simple things like keeping those doors locked. Sounds simple, but it's not something that happens. We've installed devices that the doors can stay locked, but they can be pulled closed without having the teacher to have to go outside and lock the doors.
In the classrooms, you
yes,
talk about the classroom doors, yeah.
And the recommendations from this group of around 20 people are some of them parents might consider to be very basic. Name tags on every staff member, making sure that point of entry of the buildings is visible. And frankly, a lot of our schools have offices and entry areas that aren't visible to the public. So we've worked we're building a new building, and we've gone to the Olympia Planning Commission and requested a variance. So our new building has that single point of entry. Some of the things that we want to do with our schools run counter to code. And so as you
have to have that discussion.
You have to have that discussion
local,
as well.
yeah.
So we're looking at our new construction and how the best safety features can be a part of that building. And there's more to come this summer that, again, we'll talk about with the board. The board hasn't seen these recommendations yet. But I think they're common sense, and they're things that we can control: the practicing, the events, being prepared, having students understand, and staff being aware of what their role is. When you look at the tornadoes in Oklahoma and you read some of the stories where teachers have been involved, educators, that's where they shine in a lot of ways. I just read the story of the teacher who was laying over the top of students to protect them. That's teacher instinct, and as a system, we have to create, I guess, as best we can, ways to keep everyone safe. And that's where we're headed with our committee recommendations, controlling what we can control.
Exactly. Well, and I think everybody recognizes that you can't plan or build for every possible, emergency that could happen. And then, of course, as soon as something happens and there isn't a way to mitigate that, that's when the public goes, well, why wasn't there something in place? And, resources are limited, but I think you're very right. You plan and control what you can, and do your best there. How about in North Thurston? How have recent events affected your planning?
Well, certainly the planning kinds of things that Yelm and Olympia have shared are, I think, common across most of our systems. In Washington State, they have some minimum requirements for all school districts in terms of safety planning components, drills, and how often they should be held, those kinds of things. But the Sandy Hook tragedy really opened our eyes to a specific kind of threat, an active shooter threat on your campus. And while it's a terrible thing, you're right. We really have chosen to focus on, there's no way you can absolutely prevent those things, but what can you do to deter and then identify as early as possible any threat like that, and then train your staff and your students to respond. And so one thing we hosted this winter was a countywide safety summit in response to this particular tragedy, and I want to thank our colleagues here because they all participated. And the purpose of that event was really to share, what are you doing in your community, what lessons are you learning? And then, like Andy was saying, despite the commonality, there are some unique differences to your community. We're a more urban community. We currently employ 3 SROs at our comprehensive high schools, and currently are pursuing a grant opportunity with Thurston County that would add an SRO to serve those schools in our district that reside in the county jurisdiction. In addition to that, I would tell you that we're looking at some very simple things as well. Some of our older schools have classroom doors that only lock from the outside. We have teachers saying, hey, for safety, it'd be nice if I had one that locked from the inside. Some of our classrooms don't have window blinds or shades, and for certain lockdown protocols, you need to be able to cover your windows. And then I would tell you, probably, like Dick said, the most important thing we're doing and we'll have completed by the end of this year is a walkthrough of every single school in our district with law enforcement, where they're telling us these are the things you need to improve and prepare for to make your school as safe as possible.
Great. Mike?
Well, the whole process for us, I think, started about 2 years ago when we had a bomb threat. And so we chose that at that time, spring of 2011, to start looking at our emergency response plans. And we've been doing that diligently. Kim Howard's been leading that process within the district. And as of today, each one of our buildings have an updated emergency response plan. It was certainly the Sandy Hook issue, created an added emphasis to that piece.
It was a real laser focus.
Exactly. Yeah. And in some ways, maybe a little overreaction. And as Dick had mentioned, there's certain things you can control and certain things you can't. And we can't create every school to look like a fortress. and we don't want to. We want them to be open community schools where people feel comfortable coming to school. But we need to balance that. And some things that maybe haven't been talked about so far is one of the things that I think we're all doing is positive behavioral intervention system programs. It's PBIS. And that is actually helping us reward kids for good behavior in school, turning our school's culture into a more positive place where kids support one another, recognize if there are other students that have issues. Our staff are more aware of that as well. Because to me, the biggest preventative measure we can make is to have good relationships with our kids and with our parents. If we know our kids well, we know our parents well, then we can intervene before these issues actually get to the point where they could become catastrophic. And so we're really focusing on prevention and doing what we can to form really strong relationships and rewarding good behavior from our kids.
Good. Well, thank you. Go ahead, jump in.
Just along that too, that we've done, I think it's right where they're with the PBIS piece though too, but I do want to mention the Crime Stoppers program in Thurston County, which is a big part of the Yelm. We utilize that greatly, and our students utilize that greatly to get that back. And then through our insurance, we have the Safe Schools Alliance piece where our parents now can go in, log in, like Mike said, developing that relationship. And they can log in and make recommendations, or if they see things that, so we've given an open conduit for them to come in and work on that and respond to our principals, and it goes right to their thing, and so we can look at that. So that's to report everything from bullying, harassment, to safety issues, to a car that passed the bus, anything like that. Right. So all that whole gamut of those things to embrace those. So that's one of the things we've done also.
Great, well, thank you. So let's talk a little bit about funding. When we decided to meet late in the school year, as I said earlier, we presumed that the legislature would be through with its work and that we would have a budget and we would know what was going to be happening. We do know that the courts have ruled that the legislature does have to fund education, and they have to do it without making cuts to education, so I know that's a positive. But as we know, today on June 6th, there's 5 days left in a special session, and negotiations still going on. Dick, I'm going to start with you. I know that something has come out, and we were having a brief discussion about it earlier, a proposal relative to funding. Where does it all sit? Have you guys taken a look at it? How is it going to affect your districts?
Well, yes, we've been working on the budget for about the last 3 to 4 months in preparation. And we've simply decided that we're going to move ahead with our work that we need to have in place, regardless of what the legislature comes up with, and mainly talking about time here. And so we've created what we call a list of enhancements, and that was driven by an online budget survey where we had close to 1,400 responses by our community. 2 community outreach meetings and our ongoing budget sessions as part of our board meetings. And we've crafted what we call enhancements, up to $500,000 of increased dollars, up to $800,000, and then a little over $1 million. And I would say right now that we're satisfied with our work at this point. And now we're just patiently waiting to determine if those enhancements will be $500,000, $800,000, or $1 million. We made early determination that we would fully fund full-day kindergarten in 2 of our most challenged buildings. We've front-funded money for a new mathematics curriculum that more clearly matches with the Common Core state standards, and a slightly larger reserve. And so we're just simply waiting, and we know that that number is going to fall somewhere, and we feel good about the enhancements. I think our board feels good where we are, so right now it's just wait.
So you've got your numbers on paper, and you're waiting to see what comes from the ledge.
Yes.
John, how are things going in North Thurston?
Well, similarly, every school district, regardless of the legislature, has to engage in budget planning for a variety of things. And because of the delay from the legislature, we're moving forward with a conservative approach that has us taking a look at current year funding, and assuming that as a baseline, and then looking at the different proposals that have been put out there legislatively, and really considering maybe the most, the one that has the least amount of new revenue. As we've been digging into that process, though, we're also discovering what's not making the news, and that is with new revenue that have been proposed, there's also new costs to districts that they've listed in these budgets. One example would be in all three budgets, a dramatic increase in the pension rates that they will charge school districts for their current employees. So the legislature, I think, will hand us some new money in one hand, and I think they'll take away money in another. And so our approach is to look at all of that, not just the revenue side, to make sure that if we are going to invest in new things, and we really do want to, that we can sustain them so that we don't spend 1 year and then find ourselves in a situation where we have to back that train up. That said, I want to mention what others have with regard to our employees, because our public school employees have really sacrificed in the last 2 years during this recession. Some of them financially, many of them financially, but Andy mentioned earlier, we've just asked people to do more with less. And I was pleased with the Supreme Court's decision because I agree with it. For years we've been underfunding K-12 education, and it's time for our state to step up. And that would help us with budget planning. Believe me, we would put the money to good use.
Have we, and Mike, I'll let you jump in here, but have we seen anything in the proposal that has come out that causes huge red flags, or is it at worst case scenario status quo, best case scenario everybody gets to do a little bit more?
Well, the new House proposed budget, I think, was presented yesterday, and I had an opportunity to take a look at it this morning. And the House budget was the high watermark going into this. And it's obvious that they're making compromises with what they've provided. They've reduced the amount that they were going to provide for MSOC, which is for materials and supplies, those type of things. For transportation has been reduced. Teacher principal evaluation, that money set aside for that's been reduced a little bit.
Even though you're in this process, you're required to be in.
In this newest budget, K-3 student-teacher ratio is reduced a little bit. There was 2 areas I think they increased a little bit. One was in learning assistance program, and the other one was in full kindergarten. They took out all of the money that they'd proposed in their original budget for compensation for classified and administrators. So in general, it's quite a rollback from the House's original budget. Now in terms of our budget, we've been doing the same process. Alan Jones, our financial director, does a great job, and he's taken a look at each one of the individual budgets and developed a plan so that we can kind of see how much revenue we would receive with that plan. But the biggest concern that we have right now is how much of the dollars that we actually do get will be flexible dollars, that we can actually make local decisions on how they're expended. That's been a moving target as well. You know, if you increase learning assistance program, for example, that's pretty much, you have to spend it in certain ways. So there seems to be a little bit of a shift to more accountability in how we're going to get the dollars than there was before as well with the new House budget. And I know that the Senate budget, they've wanted to push that from the beginning. One other thing that's a little disturbing is that they are talking about moving the apportionment date from the last day of the month to the first day of the next month. And for some districts, that is a very difficult piece to manage.
So quickly, for those of us who don't understand what the apportionment date means, what is that?
Apportionment is the dollars we get on a monthly basis for operational purposes based on our student enrollment and our staffing. And some districts have the capacity to actually, within their budget, there's enough reserve, thank you.
That you can
There's
carry
enough
over.
reserve that they can deal with that. Other districts would have difficulty doing that.
Like it really needs to be here on a certain date.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's.
So is that just accounting gymnastics?
Yes,
on the part of
I
the
would,
legislature?
I would call it that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll call it that.
A gimmick. Yeah.
Andy, how about you?
Yeah, I think that we're very similar to what these gentlemen and what their districts are doing also. Basically, we're very conservative. I think the concern for me is that, you know, for the last 4 years, we've actually cut programs and gotten leaner. And so when we talk about enhancements, I think we say enhancements, but I honestly think that we're hopeful that we can get back to where we were 3 or 4 years ago as far as the level of programming that we can do. Very tough to go through and put a budget together right now and plan for new programs. And that we hear the word accountability. We want student achievement to go up. We want our teachers to have these frameworks and TPEP and things, but no dollars, no cents, no resources given to really help that, except to more time and effort by folks. So I do think that Jeff Roll, our deputy superintendent, is phenomenal. He's probably one of the better ones in the state. He's right on board with what we're doing and where we're going, and we have a plan. But again, it's a wait and see, and we are operating kind of off last year's dollars. The other thing that we did in Yelm that's a little different from their districts is we only ran our levy at about 80% of the capacity. The state tells you how much you can run. Because of that rural piece, we don't have a lot of industry, so we have to run a much scaled back levy so the taxation isn't so hard on our, our stakeholders, and so we have to play that piece too. So we don't have some of the local dollars that other people do to play with. So a much leaner budget, but going forward, still retaining staff and plan to keep that.
Well, not just with the funding piece, but was there anything else that's floating around legislatively that might land on the districts that, I mean, in the form of like an unfunded mandate? Is there anything coming down that they're going, you got to do this and figure out how to pay for it?
Well, there are numerous. They run the gamut. Highly capable is one example. And frankly, gifted and talented program. And frankly, there haven't been a lot of resources driven in school districts' direction to support that segment of the student population. And if you think about that juxtaposed with No Child Left Behind and dollars going into interventions with students to help them reach a standard, sometimes I think the dollars are even fewer. And there are new requirements around testing, for beginning at kindergarten, and redesign of program, and there's not a lot of support for that. And it's a worthy
goal. But it's laid
goal,
there,
right?
And they say, here, do this.
Right, and again, they run the gamut. We just read one or heard about one the other day that has to do with teaching CPR to every student before they graduate from high school. Worthy, something that we can do in our schools, but there are multiple of pieces of legislation that come through that way.
So how much, and I'm tossing this one out, so if it catches you off guard, I apologize. How much of your budget really do you have any kind of discretionary control over?
Well, first of all, I think for all of us, 80% of our budget is on salaries and benefits. So there's not a lot of discretion there. And so that leaves 20% theoretically that could be discretionary, but much less than that is actually open for us to actually expend the way we would necessarily choose to. So.
Because it's earmarked for specific projects or programs
or even from federal dollars that have some very specific, like Title I resources. How you're going to spend that money is very prescribed.
Just to add to what Dick said about the highly capable, there are new requirements added to the highly capable this year. We receive from the state about $50,000. We're going to expend close to $300,000 in putting that program in place. And because we're trying to develop the best program possible, we've had to make it a magnet program, which is pulling kids out of our schools to go to one elementary school. Some kids that could access that choose not to because they don't want to leave their home school, and that's just an example of a non-funded mandate. We have others that actually are more expensive than high cap. So.
Okay. Well, let's take a little segue into assessment, because you both mentioned a couple of you have mentioned something about testing. That always seems to be a bit of a moving target too, and it looks like there's going to be changes in student assessment. So how is it going to impact? What are you planning for relative to the core national standards, all that? So I'm going to start with you, John.
Sure, with the Common Core National Standards coming our way. I know we're not alone. In fact, all of our school districts have been engaged in ramping up for that in a variety of ways. In our district, we've gathered teachers to take a look at the standards themselves and consider what we'll do by way of selecting and implementing new curriculum that aligns better to those standards and prepares all of our kids for those.
Can I just interject or jump in for a second? So what is the Common Core? We're speaking specifically about particular like math, science, English.
Sure.
I mean, what is the Common Core?
Your core subject areas, math, reading, writing, science, that have been traditionally defined as your Common Core. One of the advantages we see in a Common Core model is that the cost of curriculum and instruction might even decrease where there's some uniformity and sharing of effective materials. And so we're already collaborating with our ESD and with other school districts in this regard.
So there are national standards set for student performance in those areas, and you're trying to bring your curriculum in alignment with that.
Absolutely.
And that's the change. We've gone from a state standard system to a Common Core, which is going to align to the national. And so where our standards at the state level might have been, like at 4th grade, you might have taught fractions, which is, I'm just off the
Right.
top. And now it might be moved to 3rd grade.
Right.
And so when you look at the alignment and how the pacing guides for teachers and where that's going to be done, you have to do you want it to be sequential, and you want to make sure that kids are taught to what they're going to be tested. So there is a big change there. Mike and I had a conversation yesterday, and I think about 90% or 80% of what our standards are there, but there's about another 10% increase from the Common Core, which will come to us. So
In the English language arts area, the state's about 80% aligned already. Right. But in math, it's 60-some%. So there's going to be more adjustment. Yeah.
I'm just going to mention a piece worth noting, I think, for the viewers. Is this is part of a bigger national conversation, and I think as a group here, although I don't want to speak for everyone, we think these standards are good. We think that there's in many ways, particularly in mathematics, that they go deeper and they demand more. But the national conversation has shifted in some ways, and you find some states that are backing out and not supporting them because for a variety of reasons, one of which is local control, or that somehow this is a federal mandate to drive education and ultimately a lowering of standards in our public schools. And as a school leader, I don't feel that at all. I feel this is the right thing to be doing. I think it, in many ways, will allow us to become even more effective instructors. For example, if our students take the same assessment, Smarter Balanced Assessment, that students are in California, and somewhere in California that has a similar demographic to the Olympia School District is outperforming us, we need to find out what they're doing. And so there are a lot of positives around this, and I think the national debate has gotten a little bit off point.
Okay. John, you were...
I would just share that there's a link in this conversation to the last one, and that is our state is shifting now to online testing of students, and so all of us now are having to take a look at the infrastructure we either have or don't have, and most of us aren't there yet, to allow for students to take state tests within a reasonable amount of time and enough facility space in which to do it. Alongside of that, it becomes really a facility question for us when you also consider that our state would like to eventually see all of us serve all-day kindergarten, a significant facility question. And so with that in mind, for our facilities planning effort, we're looking at all of that, saying, on top of that, we're the fastest growing school district in the county. We really need some more space, and that's prominent in our goal setting right now.
I guess I'd just like to add one other piece to this. And we've been legislated that we implement the new teacher-principal evaluation. And everybody has to be engaged in that by 15-16. Common Core has to be in place 14-15. We do have a plan in place to implement Common Core, and it varies a little bit from elementary, middle to high with English language arts and mathematics over the next 2 years. So we've got a plan in place. As Dick said, I think we're all supportive of having common curricular requirements and a similar assessment, so we can actually see how we're doing not only within the state but nationally. And I think the Washington State's going to do quite well compared nationally here. But one thing that we need to point out is that we're expecting, and I think this is uniformly, we're expecting all of our test results to go down because the Smarter Balance Assessment is more difficult than the traditional WASL, HISP, MSP. So hopefully our communities are ready for a drop. Now, will we drop as much as some other states? I don't think so, but we will probably see a drop. The other issue that's being debated is, should these Smarter Balance requirements now become graduation requirements as well? And that is something that needs to be clarified, because if they do become graduation requirements, then we're going to have difficulty getting our students ready for graduation as well. So.
Okay. Well, let's move on to, we're coming to the close of our time together, and we're at the end of the school year. We are in graduation season. It was a wonderful segue into this. So how about we share those special moments from this school year? We had some these are the great things going on earlier, but I know each of you probably have a personal story about something that has really touched you in this school year, something a student said or did, and so we kind of want to share those before we close the program. Andy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, just really short. I mean, a lot of great things out there, but the other night I was at the senior awards night, and a little girl asked to take the floor, and kind of unbeknownst, but so she walks up there. She's a 5th grader from one of our elementary schools who's a high cap student, and she had individually done fundraising to create a scholarship to give to a senior class member, because she had read, her research was about lack of funding at the, for schools and what it was cost, post-secondary, and all the money was there. And so she got up and she awarded a $218.57 scholarship to a, and I tell you what, it touched my heart. It was one of those moments that it didn't matter how much the money was, it was the effort that she put forth. And I know that the recipient was very touched also. So she went through a formal process through our scholarship committee, which we hadn't known about, but the Dollars for Scholars Committee had addressed.
Oh, phenomenal.
So it was very nice. It was very
philanthropy
touching.
At a young age. I love that. How about you, Dick?
Without question, 3 weeks ago on a Friday night, I went to the Life Skills Prom and at Olympia High School. And it was for all students who are in life skills programs across the county. These are probably our most developmentally challenged students. They were wearing tuxedos and formals, and it was a fabulous event. And I guess this will tell you a little bit about me as well, but when I looked out on the dance floor and there's a young man with Down syndrome playing air guitar and smiling and dancing and sort of letting the music flow through him, it really touched me. And to make it even, I think, more touching, that whole organization was done by an Olympia High School student for her culminating project. They dinner out, they were moved to Olympia High School for the dance, and it was just, frankly, it was a highlight of the school year for me.
Wonderful, thanks. How about you, John?
Similarly, this year Tumwater School District hosted a region-wide event called a Day of Champions at the Tumwater Stadium there, and districts from across the county come to participate. That's an event for special needs students. I went with one of our principals this year to actually participate in the event, walk with a group of our students. And it's not only that the students light up and really have a day committed to them, it's really a mini form of Special Olympics, is what it amounts to. But parents were there, and I was struck by the tears of joy, that parents who were alongside of their kids, seeing them excel and really experience something that is different than a classroom experience, and something that is truly largely a volunteer effort. And I want to thank Mike and the folks in his district that helped put that on this year, because our kids truly benefited from that. And that was a touching thing for me to be part of.
Fabulous.
We actually have about 500 kids countywide that are participating in that now. It's really a very, very neat thing. A couple things. We talked a little bit about our exit surveys with our seniors this year, and the thing that's coming out with our seniors in both our schools is the compassion they have, and really the diverse goals and skill package that they're bringing. And I took a look at a Georgetown survey on the jobs that have the highest employment rate, least unemployment rate. And if you go into nursing or you go into actually elementary education nationally, are the two highest areas in terms of employment. The one thing that I would like to mention in this specific regard is that we have a grant for a STEM grant, and STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And 2 of our elementaries were part of the grant. And at Michael T. Simmons in particular, it's really been an emphasis this year. And tomorrow, actually, we have, I think it's 20 students that are actually doing a video thing on livable cities. And this is a collaborative between Intercity Transit and also the city of Tumwater. And it's amazing what these kids do. It's turned into kind of a community event for Michael T. Simmons, because the parents come in, the grandparents come in, and this is, I think, the 3rd kind of public presentation that they've done. It's amazing what those kids at that age can do if we provide them the resources and the training to do it. So,
great. Well, thank you all, gentlemen. We're going to call this session of the Roundtable to a close. Thank you for joining us today, John. We really appreciate you sitting in for Raj. And thank you for joining us. Remember, if you have preschool children, read 20 minutes a day with them. It's one of the best things you can do to get them ready for their education. And if you're the parent of a school-age child, get involved in your child's education. There's many ways you can participate as a volunteer at your child's school. Go to the school or district website to find out how you can participate. To the parents of the class of 2013, congratulations. You did a great job. And to the students graduating from our schools, may your road be filled with opportunity and your heart filled with gratitude. Congratulations from all of us here at the Superintendent's Roundtable and from TCTV. We'll see you again in the fall. Thank you all.